And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the 8 o'clock spot live here on the Gryd Network's YouTube channel and Twitter account. As always, I am Bryson Carver, back with a great panelist, great panel of guys here live on the 8 o'clock spot. So returning favorites, some past champions, Mike, Guido, and Adam, and Dylan and Dalton have been finalists before. So we got a loaded show on tap tonight. But let's go through our panelists first. First of all, Dylan Lima. First of all, I want to say, Dylan, congratulations to your Patriots on knocking off my Steelers on that Thursday night. I'm still trying to forget it and get it out of my head, but congratulations, Dylan.
Thank you. It was the most inconsequential game for the Patriots and most consequential for your team, so it couldn't have gone any worse for your team. But thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Listen, great to have you on. And how my Steelers are still in the playoff picture, it's like dying a slow death. It's gotten to a point where it's absolutely miserable. To Mike Guido, who is again, he's wearing that Buffalo Bills polo. He brings it out every once in a while, I guess, because the Bills won against the Chiefs. We'll get into that on the show. But Guido, you are a Cowboys fan at the end of the day. How are you feeling?
Great. Listen, I've had a great past week or so in sports. Listen, my mom's a Bills fan, so I have to represent the Bills at some point. I know Adam's disappointed in me because the Cowboys are playing the Bills this week. I promise you I'm all Cowboys this week. I get it. But I'm also a very happy Yankee fan. Juan Soto now in pinstripes. That's listen, me and Dalton, I think, can go back and forth on that quite a bit. But I'm very excited. A very good past 7 to 10 days in sports for me.
Listen, I understand that, but the Juan Soto thing, we can just couch that for the segment and forget that if it ever happened until next year. We're gonna forget about that. Adam Besse of the Cowboys CanFan Podcast. I was on your show all last week, had a great time. I know y'all did. Y'all cracked a couple, if you know what I'm saying, on the CanFan during the Cowboys' big win over the Eagles, which we'll get into in just a moment. Adam, how are you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic. Happy to be back here to win another 8 o'clock spot. And to prove to Mike Guido that he should never, ever wear that Bills shirt ever again during Cowboys Bills week. What are you thinking? Tell Mrs. Guido that tell Mrs. Guido there's 1 week a year that you should not be wearing that Bills shirt, and you decide to wear it on Cowboys Bills week. Mike Guido, not happy right now.
I haven't done laundry in like 3 weeks, so I'm
shirtless
stuff out of the clean laundry bin right now. This is what was there.
Go shirtless.
Vance does it.
That's
what it does for sure. By the way, just since you're on here, Adam, I did want to bring up this comment from the Cowboys CanFan. Can't wait to watch the guys battle it out. So your buddies there at the CanFan are definitely representing there in the comments. And finally, Dalton Brown, a previous 8 o'clock spot finalist, and I believe a previous champion on the show. We'll get to the leaderboard in just a moment. But Dalton, you also had a great weekend with the Lakers winning the in-season tournament and the Dodgers getting Shohei Ohtani. How are you feeling today? Your mic is muted, Dalton. Your mic is muted, Dalton.
Fun. Great. I watched, maybe about 4 minutes total of the in-season tournament. So loved that. The big news obviously on my side is the Dodgers signing Shohei Ohtani and a lot more to come for them. So yeah, I'm in a good mood this week. I'm excited to be here.
Forfeit the season if y'all sign Yamamoto. That might be truly miserable for the rest of Major League Baseball. Certainly for the National League West, which y'all have dominated for a very long time. Real quick, I got a comment here from our guy, My Thoughts, My Opinion Sports Podcast, Devin. He says, "Yo, what it is?" Devin has been on the show and he calls himself Mr. Runner Up. We'll get Devin back on the 8 o'clock spot sooner rather than later. But first and foremost, let's look at our leaderboard and look. Oh my goodness, look at the top. We have a new leader, Mike Guido, ahead by 100 points over Barry Grant Jr., followed by Alfred Parsar Jr., John Rivera, Devin Nettles, Dalton Brown, Adam Besse, Ryan Flowers, Dylan Lima, Alex Johnson, and Eric Van Linton. So we got some 8 o'clock spot finalists and champions this week. This should be a very fun show. We are going to start in Dallas, Texas. Here we go. The Dallas Cowboys winning their 5th consecutive game and beating the Philadelphia Eagles in dominant fashion, 33-13. Dak Prescott a couple of touchdowns. The Dallas defense only giving up 6 points of total 6 points to the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts struggled. They turned the ball over. The Eagles offense did 3 times in this football game. Again, this is a battle of 2 of the powerhouses in the NFC. It's 2 teams we could very well see getting to this year's Super Bowl. So I will start with you first, Dylan. Were you more impressed by the Cowboys or unimpressed by the Eagles?
As much as I hate to give credit to the Cowboys, we have to give it up to them. The Eagles, I've been kind of low on the Eagles recently. Last time I was on the show, I called the Niners the favorites over the Eagles, despite the Eagles' great record they had at the time, and they've done nothing but lose since. They seem to be slowly running out of tricks in their bag. And the Cowboys are proving to be the real deal. They're playing fantastically on both sides of the ball. Dak Prescott's playing out of his mind. I'm very surprised by Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, he's made me a believer. I was definitely low on him to start the season, but now he's coming around for me to really treat him as a real good running back that could support the Cowboys for a potential playoff run.
Yeah, that's one thing that did surprise me about Dallas was their ability to run the football against that Philadelphia front. Obviously, Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox and all the guys that they have up front over there in Philadelphia. Their ability to run, I think they had like 4.1 yards a carry, so they were really good in terms of running the football. So, Dylan, good take. And by the way, I should mention before I obviously see the 100 points for Dylan, I forgot to mention, I apologize to the audience. Let's look at our first round rules super quickly. A great take gives you 200 points. Good take gives you 100. Okay take gives you 50. And a bad take, you come home empty-handed with 0 points. But Dylan gets a good take, 100 points there. Solid take by Dylan. And again, I think the Cowboys running game was one of the bigger stories of that game. Again, the fact that Dak against an elite team, not an elite defense by any stretch, but an elite team nonetheless, did not have to play amazing for them to win is definitely bodes well for Dallas. To a Cowboys fan, Mike Guido, were you more impressed by the Cowboys or unimpressed by the Eagles?
I would say I'm more impressed by the Cowboys. I mean, there's definitely their fair share of disappointment when it comes to the Eagles, but what the Cowboys have been able to do for the last 6 or 7 weeks has been incredible. And it's really shown up, I think, in the past 2 weeks. Now, given Seattle is not an amazing team, I don't think that they're a bottom of the barrel team in the NFL, obviously, but it was one of those games where you felt like they needed to win like that, right? They go down to the wire with a lot of these games, and situational football is really where they kind of lack. And they found themselves, in a good spot in the Seahawk game. But I think as far as this game is concerned, I mean, this is one of those games where you proved what you are against bad teams against a good team, right? This is a team that takes the football away more than anybody in the league. This is the number one scoring offense in the league. This is the best team on third down. They're converting about 49% on third down. Listen, they can get after the quarterback. You're seeing now late in the season, you're seeing an emergence from Stephon Gilmore. Once he switched on to DK Metcalf last week, he was fantastic. So listen, I think what you're seeing from Dallas now is growth rather than regression. And I think with the Eagles, you're actually seeing a steady form of regression. Now the Eagles are going to be fine because their schedule gets really easy towards the end. But what Dallas is showing you right now, I think is very, very impressive.
It is impressive, and it's the fact that, again, against a Philadelphia Eagles team, that if you take the Niners game out, they'd shown an ability to score at the best against the best defense in the league. Even, talking about Buffalo's defense and teams like that. Kansas City, they were able to make some plays down the stretch. We know how good the Chiefs' defense has been this season. For Dallas to dominate the game in the fashion that they did. And, listen, you had A.J. Brown, one of the better receivers in the sport, but he poked the bear against one of the old guys, Stephon Gilmore, and he certainly got the better of that matchup. So, Mike Guido, I'm going to give you a great take, just across the board, a great take in terms of mentioning the Dallas Cowboys defense in terms of scoring defense. And we can, I don't want to overreact too much, but over the last month, you can maybe call that Seahawks performance kind of a little bit of an outlier, but just a bad game, bad day at the office. Obviously, DK Metcalf was awesome in that game against Deron Bland. And so, like you said, making that adjustment, they're very well coached by Dan Quinn, obviously. To Adam Besse of the Cowboys CanFan Podcast, obviously another Cowboys fan, were you more impressed by the Cowboys or unimpressed by the Eagles?
I've been unimpressed by the Eagles all season long. So to have that continue on against the Cowboys at home, I'm impressed by how the Cowboys continue to show the naysayers and the analysts wrong. They say the Cowboys aren't an aggressive team, and we come out and we shut down 3 of their number ones by forcing the fumbles and forcing those turnovers and getting those turnovers. So I'm just impressed that Dallas is stepping up to the challenge. Pre-game or pre-show, heard the little chirp about Cowboys are going to do Cowboys things, and that's what people have been seeing every single week to week, and we've been proving them wrong. So continuing to be impressed by how Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott are handling this offense, and the defense is coming up to a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who are like a generational team, and they just figure out how to win, and yet they didn't score an offensive touchdown. They had to rely on their special teams and Jalen Carter to put up points on the board. So even in a game where Dallas could have easily put up another 20 points, I was still impressed with how they answered the call and shut up a lot of the haters and the analysts, because this was step one to proving that the Cowboys are the real deal this year.
Yeah, because the narrative the next day, if Dallas had lost to Philly, would have been, see, they can't beat the good teams. See, they're a front-running team. They can only beat the, take advantage of the bad competition. There's no question about that. And I like the fact that you brought up the fact that, listen, we've kind of, I shouldn't say we've been thinking, but the general consensus is we're just waiting for them to kind of stumble over, and it really hasn't happened whatsoever. Like that Seahawks game was a prime opportunity, and they answered the call in the fourth quarter. I'm going to give Adam a great take here. 200 points for Adam. Great take right there for you, because I thought you bring a good take about the Dallas's defense doing what they did against a high-powered Eagles offense, which I think was 6th in the NFL in scoring offense coming into this matchup. Finally, to you, Dalton, were you impressed by the Cowboys, or I should say more impressed by the Cowboys or more unimpressed by the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I think I came away from that game more impressed with Dallas, but I think the writing was on the wall regarding how this game might go, just given the scheduling situation for each team. I mean, you look at the Eagles' schedule over the last month and a half. You go Dolphins, Commanders, and then you get Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Cowboys. I mean, this is the tail end of a really long stretch for them. It's a banged-up team. And it's a team that, while it's healthy, is not in its best form right now. That defense has been getting gashed week in and week out. I think there are legitimate reasons for concern in Philadelphia, but I think they have time to get healthy and get right against an easy back end of the schedule. Obviously, Dallas is in kind of the opposite spot, right? Dallas has cruised through a mostly easy schedule. At the end of the day, this is their first win over a team that currently has a winning record. But I don't want to take a lot away from Dallas, because at the end of the day, they blew them out. They did what they needed to do. They forced 3 turnovers. They were 3 for 3 in the red zone. But I still think we're going to learn more about the Cowboys down the stretch as they get some of these games on the road, having to go to Buffalo, having to go to Miami. I still think we have more to learn about Dallas. I'm not ready to crown them yet. Who I am ready to crown is Dak Prescott. I think he is very deservingly at the top of the MVP race, and that I'm not quick to that opinion. That being said, he's going to have to earn it over these last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, and you bring up an interesting point about Dallas. And I think the first guy I heard bring that up about last year for Dallas on the road is not necessarily that they're a bad road team necessarily, like the noise gets to them, is Jason Garrett mentioned last year. I remember before the 49ers playoff game, like they tend to struggle on grass, and we know younger teams, which most of Dallas's great players are younger guys in their 20s. The turf kind of plays to their speed. Obviously, guys like Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, it plays to their advantage. And I'm glad you brought up Dak Prescott, Dalton, and what he's been able to do. And he is squarely in front of the MVP conversation. So I will give you a great take there, 200 points. We got a 3-way tie in first place at 200 points, and Dylan there at 100. We're still a very, very long way to go. We got a few comments here. And, of course, everybody feel free to chime in the comment section. Barry Grant Jr., now Mr. Second Place, by you'd like that, Guido. He said, tush push my ass. He says, hurt mid AF, but I'm sure Guido will say he's elite, just like he said about Carson Wentz. For the record, Jalen Hurts better than Carson Wentz, but we can move. That's another discussion for another day.
Bryson, I will say this, just to interrupt. I'm sorry, because I have to rebut to that.
Sure,
that proves that he doesn't know anything about me at all, because you should know this. I have been everything but, or I should say, I have been nothing but a Jalen Hurts skeptic ever since he came into the league. So that proves he knows nothing about me at all. He doesn't even pay attention to what I say.
Listen, I hold a higher opinion of Jalen Hurts than most, but then again, I also hold a higher opinion of Dak Prescott than most. So it seemed like everybody's starting to come around to where I was at. But listen, we got some comments from the Cowboys CanFan. Your guys, Adam. He says, Cowboys beat the Jets when they were 1-0. However, I will have to say, CanFan, Dalton did say a team that is currently over 500. So I will give you credit. Now, if it was at the time they had a winning record, I think the Rams game would, or not the Rams game, the Jets game would count, the Seahawks game would count, but nonetheless, still that remains to be true. Let's look at our second round rules as we go into this. Everything gets doubled. A great take gives you 400 points. A good take gives you 200 points. An okay take gives you 100 points. And a bad take, you come home empty-handed once again with 0 points. In Kansas City, where we had major controversy with the Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, some crazy stuff. So the Chiefs were down 3 points, 20-17, late in the fourth quarter with about a minute to go. They pull off a crazy lateral play from Kelsey to Kadarius Toney to score what looked to be potentially the game-winning touchdown, but it was called back to an offensive offsides on Kadarius Toney. And Patrick Mahomes was certainly not happy about this. He darn near attacked a ref, and Andy Reid and Mahomes and everybody were attacking the officials after the game. Now Mahomes has walked back his comments to a certain degree today, but nonetheless, the Chiefs were not happy whatsoever. So I'll start with you, Mike Guido. Are the Kansas City Chiefs justified in their criticism of the officials in this game?
No, I really don't think that this is an argument. Now, listen, NFL referees have relationships with players, and they say, hey, listen, back up an inch, make sure you're legal, and they do all of that stuff on certain occasion. But you're late in the game. You have to make sure that you're lined up properly and you're not giving your team a reason to lose unnecessarily, right? Now, I think most of the frustration came from the Chiefs made a great offensive play, which, quite frankly, they don't make a lot of right now this year. They just don't, right? They don't. They don't have receivers that separate. This is an offensive line that has not been as good as we've seen in years past. This is right now a very defense-focused Kansas City Chiefs team. So they finally get that big breakout play, and it gets called out because of a mental mistake, right? I just think, listen, I understand that referees and players sometimes have relationships and stuff like that, and it kind of can favor you on the field in some sense, where the referee can give you a little bit of a break for something that minor. But in a big situation like that, that's just something you can't have happen. So there's no real gripe that should be had right here with any NFL officiating, at least in this instance. No.
Well, I certainly agree with you. I will say this, and I posed this on my show yesterday, carving it up, that there is a potential. This is just a theory that I have. This may or may not be true. I think Mahomes' outburst and the Chiefs being as pissed off as they were, I think they knew that in years past, if it's second down and 15 midfield, they can get that in one play with their explosiveness. I think Patrick Mahomes knew that was Kansas City's last punch in that game. At that point, it was over. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think that factored in as well. Yeah. And obviously, second straight loss, and I believe 3 losses out of the last 4. So frustrating, certainly mounting for the Chiefs. Now to you, Adam. Do you think the Chiefs' outrage with the officials was justified?
The only thing that it justified was all the fantastic post-game memes that have come out from it. I mean, the fact that Patrick Mahomes has to be held back yelling at the refs, and even when going to center field and meeting with Josh Allen, and you're not even like saying good game, you're talking about how bad that call was. Clearly, Kadarius Toney was eating the defensive back that was across from him. He was like they were making out. He was that far over the line of scrimmage. It was absolutely ridiculous. So, you know what? I get it, where they could seem frustrated in the moment, but like, you're a professional football player. You're never supposed to be offside. The refs telling you or giving you a warning is a courtesy, okay? It's not a right. And Andy Reid saying the things like, usually they come by and give me warnings, and in big games like this, they tell us. It's like, they don't have to do that though. So there is rules for rules' sake, and again, it's the common courtesy of the ref to kind of check you out and let you know. But it's not. It's the player who made the infraction, and they're now going to suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, they are
not justified. Not justified.
No, I do. Again, I do agree with you. And I think one big thing too is, and I mentioned this on my show as well. I think it was Greg Jennings I heard say this. Like a big factor why the ref maybe didn't communicate with Kadarius Toney is because he was lined up inside in the slot. So he would have had to, especially listen. The Chiefs, Arrowhead is not going to be loud when the Chiefs are on offense, but it's still late in the game. The intensity is building. It's going to be hard to kind of yell, "Hey, 19, get back on sides." Maybe it's even hard to see from that vantage point, or not the offsides, obviously, but for Toney in general to be within earshot. So you make some good points. But Adam, I'm also going to give you a great take of 400 points right here to put you again tied with Mike Guido at the top. I thought that was good. And of course, we love some good-natured humor on the 8 o'clock spot. So I always get points for that. We always want to have fun here. To Dalton Brown, were the Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes, Andy Reid in particular, were they justified in their criticism and their outrage of the officials?
No, of course not. I mean, look, this at the end of the day, this is fury that is more turned inward, I think, than we got to see post game. I think there's a lot of emotion in that situation. There's a lot of competitiveness that spills over in ways that's not always pretty. I don't really hold that against an athlete. I think that's heat of the moment type stuff. That being said, Kadarius Toney's a known bozo. Like, this isn't news. This guy's been a bozo his whole career, and the Chiefs right now have a receiving core full of bozos, and it's the reason they're going to have to play road games in the playoffs this year, something Mahomes is not familiar with doing. This offense right now is pretty mid. They've scored 21 points once in their last 5 games, or excuse me, more than 21 points once in their last 5 games. They don't have very much explosiveness downfield. Everything they're doing is underneath, and Mahomes doesn't have a whole lot of time. And honestly, if Pacheco, continues to be hurt or misses more time or suffers another injury, I think they're going to really struggle to move the ball. So look, to me, it's just not a huge story, right? I mean, the call was obvious. Tony was lined up in the slot. I'm glad you touched on that because that's something I was going to touch on. He was lined up in the slot. He gave a half-ass check. It is what it is, right? It's an obvious call. It's unfortunate. I understand why it's frustrating as a competitor with the Chiefs, but it is what it is, right? I mean, you line up a yard off sides, you're going to get called for it. So I'm sure that there have been conversations had with Kadarius Toney more than there have been with the league in the last couple days.
No question about that. And Andy Reid sort of alluded to that in an interview yesterday. So that 100% matters. And yeah, Tony has been, you use the word bozo. That's probably an adequate word to describe because you could argue he blew the game in a big way against Detroit all the way back in week 1 with the drop that turned into a pick 6 with Brian Branch against the Lions. He also had some key drops after that. So, and I think he had a fumble the very next week against the Jaguars. So he has really struggled to basically not make mistakes, not screw things up. And listen, I thought when the Chiefs traded for this guy from the Giants, at least given what I'd seen from him at the University of Florida, I'm thinking, hey, there's another gadget that Mahomes and Andy Reid can use, and he simply has not panned out into that guy. And by the way, after a pretty good Super Bowl performance as well. To Dylan, finally, were the Kansas City Chiefs justified in their criticism and outrage of the officials?
I'm going to join all my panelists and say no, not justified at all. Without being a dead horse already, it's obvious. The penalty couldn't be any more obvious. And for Mahomes to whine and complain as much as he did, not only in the moment after the game, but also in the post-game press conference, I just don't feel bad. This is the same team that we saw early in the season where their offensive tackles were jumping off sides every single play, and the refs were just swallowing their whistle. So now, miraculously, when the right call was made, now you're going to cry and complain. I have no sympathy. It just falls on deaf ears to me. I'm seeing fans online talking about, oh, he in the moment, this is such a great play. Why are you going to take this away from the Chiefs? It's like, do you want the WWE or do you want an actual competitive sport as the NFL? Because if we're going to just play make-believe and play fantasy football where it's like, oh, that was a cool play, we're going to count that despite, the wrongdoings then what are we doing here? This is not competitiveness. This is not the game that we all love. And, quite frankly, I get the frustration where I think especially Mahomes, he's watching his team disintegrate around him, especially on the offensive side of the field. And too bad, you got to learn how to line up properly. And hopefully you learn that in the next coming games and you turn this around. But the fact that Mahomes has to walk back and make an apology, he knows he's in the wrong. So I don't see why there should be anyone, in favor.
Yeah, that's fair. First of all, before I get to you and respond to you, Dylan, I forgot to put up your point total, Dalton. I did give you a great take, so you get the 600 points there. So you were tied right now at the top with Adam and with Mike. And that's interesting. A point you bring up, Dylan, is the fact that we let the play and the outcome of the play or a potential outcome affect how maybe we see the offsides. I've always had a rule that in the last 5 minutes of especially a basketball game or a football game, don't call anything. Don't throw a flag. Don't call a foul if we're talking about hoops unless it's completely obvious. And in that case, it was. His foot was clearly offsides, and it was an obvious call, and the officials made the correct call. Dylan, I'm going to give you a great take here, so get you to 500 points. So very, very, very good stuff. It's very tight here as we go in the third round. We got some comments here right now. Oh, wow, the CanFan guys, I think they're making fun of Mahomes. Even they put the frog emoji. I think that's a Kermit reference, which is, of course,
I'm right here.
To Patrick's voice. Let's see. We got some more stuff from Barry. He says, Patrick Mahomes need a manager like Paul Heyman because I can't hear him talk anymore. Wow. He's just going at the guy. He says, wide receivers need to check with the refs every play. Tony has idiot brain, an all-even podcast classic, and they are not a deep playoff team this year. The crying is weak. Instead of taking more money from the Chiefs, Mahomes need to give some back to get some talent. Fire the NFL scout too. Man's name must be Rubbish Robertson, VP of scouting. Wow. This is taking shots at everybody right now. It's rough.
Is Barry trying to get points by by points even when he's not on the panel?
I rarely know Barry's goals, Adam. So your guess is just as good as mine. But Barry, you're not getting points on the show that you're not participating in. But listen, he is actually about to say he's the points leader, but that's Mike. So listen, we got a long ways to go. And Alonzo Diaz in the comments says the Cowboys suck. Wow, that's
original Alonzo.
And he also
thanks
says,
for coming in.
For sure. Chiefs have won more Super Bowls than the Cowboys in the past 12 months, and the Cowboys have in the last 20 years. Well, it's hard to win more Super Bowls than a team in the last 4 months. I hate to tell you.
Learn how to frame a sentence first, Alonzo, and go cry with Mahomes. But thanks for coming in and tuning into the Gryd Network. Keep commenting. It helps the algorithm there, pal.
It does. There's no question about that. And all press is good press, they say, right?
Alonzo, I'm right here.
Shots fired at our very loyal listeners and viewers. This is brutal. All right, let's get into our third round rules. Everything gets doubled. Once again, a great take gives you 800 points. A good take gives you 400. Okay take gives you 200. And a bad take, you come home empty-handed. The funny thing is, we have had unanimous agreement on our first two segments. I have a feeling that is going to change in this next one. So, in Major League Baseball, two massive trades, two massive offseason moves. The Yankees trading for Padres superstar, now Yankees superstar player Juan Soto, who won the World Series with the Nationals in 2019 as a multi-time All-Star player, fantastic player, and one of the most notable free agents, maybe the most notable free agent in the history of Major League Baseball, and I do not think that's hyperbolic. Shohei Ohtani signing a 10-year, $700 million contract with the Dodgers. It is the richest contract in the history of American team sports. However, it is basically getting backloaded to save the team some money. Again, baseball obviously is a no-cap sport, so that doesn't necessarily need to do that, but it does help the team to potentially add more talent. And listen, I'm just going to say this right now. I know Dalton's a Dodgers fan. We'll get to him. But if the Dodgers add Yamamoto, it's over. Dodgers World Series champions 2024. I'll start with you, Mike Guido. I think I have a feeling where you're going with this. I probably have a feeling where Dalton's going with this, but I'll ask you anyway. What is the more impactful offseason move? Is it Soto to the Yankees? Is it Ohtani to the Dodgers?
You're starting with me, Bryson. Is that what you said?
I'm starting with you, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I right now I think it's Juan Soto to the Yankees, and I think that Ohtani to the Dodgers is without a doubt crazy impactful. But the Dodgers, I think, are solving a problem that they don't necessarily have with the Ohtani issue, because Ohtani's not going to pitch next year. They still need tons of starting pitching. Even with Buehler coming back, I'm assuming that Kershaw is going to come back on some sort of short-term 1-year contract as well. And like I said, I think Ohtani's not going to pitch until the very earliest 2025, and we don't know what kind of pitcher he'll be then. But right now, I think it's Juan Soto to the Yankees, because I think they solved their biggest need. This was a team that was 29th in Major League Baseball in batting average. The only team that was worse than them were the Oakland Athletics. And how many games did they win? Like 40? They were just absolutely terrible. And regardless of what you do in that lineup, right, because it's going to be Aaron Judge and Juan Soto in the 2 and 3 hole for the Yankee lineup. These are two guys that get on base a ton. Juan Soto had a 257 batting average last year, but got on base over 40% of the time. Regardless of how you look at it, that's protection for both guys, regardless of how you line them up. This is an outfielder that, despite the fact that he's not great defensively and not great on the bases, this is a guy that fills the exact hole that the Yankees are trying to fill. It gives them the middle of the order bat that I think that this is better than what they could have asked for. So, and I also think, truthfully, if you look long-term, I think the Yankees are very I probably shouldn't say very likely, but are likely to bring him back after this 1 year. So right now, I think it's Juan Soto. I just think that right now they solved the issue that they needed to solve, and the Dodgers still have things that they need to address heavily with something that they struggled with last year, and that's really missing on a lot of starting pitching.
They did miss out on a lot of starting pitching, although I'd argue a lot of that is due to injury. Obviously, we know what's been going on with Walker Buehler.
Yeah, it's a lot of young guys. I mean, I think I don't know what the situation with Julio Urias is going to be really ugly. I'm not sure where that's going to end up going. Guys like Dustin May, I think, could come back and contribute in a big way to that rotation as well. But again, at the top end of that rotation, I think you're really relying on guys that are coming back from injuries. So it really depends. I still think that that's an area of need that they have to address heavily.
You know, Mike Guido, you probably thought as a Red Sox fan I was just going to screw you over just because I completely disagree with you, and I don't think this is a massive, or I shouldn't say not a massive. It's not as impactful of a move as Ohtani, but nonetheless, I think you made a good case. I'm going to give you a great take here, Mike. I'm going to be nice to you today because I thought you were on point in terms of they did fill a hole. Again, I think Ohtani doesn't fill a hole in LA. You are correct about that. I do think Ohtani, though, is again one of the best, I'm not going to say greatest because he hasn't played long enough, but one of the best baseball players we've ever seen in our lifetimes. Shifting now to you, Adam, what's the more impactful move? Is it Juan Soto to the Yankees, or is it Shohei Ohtani to the Los Angeles Dodgers?
I think at the moment right now, with Ohtani signing that massive deal, for the Dodgers in the moment now, it's the most impactful move. But kind of what Guido was saying, long-term and possibly as like a revitalization for the Yankees, Soto to the Yankees fixing their problems, whereas the Dodgers are just adding depth, right? And that's fantastic. You have to do that. Good teams become great teams. Great teams become juggernauts when they're able to continue to add depth and flexibility to their roster. So it's massively impactful this year, I think, for the LA Dodgers. But in terms of impactful as an organization and as a team, I do feel like I have to edge a little bit over to the Yankees, because I do think that when you can take a player and you can complement it with somebody like Judge, and you have that 2-3 spot, or you have a solid hitter who can get on base, and it can help revitalize that organization and start getting other players to say, hey, maybe I got to go back to the pinstripes. I think it's going to be most impactful for the Yankees as a turnaround. But if we're talking about in the moment, I would say the Dodgers.
Okay, you make good points all the way around. I think,
that's from someone who doesn't give an F about baseball.
I was gonna say that was given that was actually a pretty darn good analysis by Besse. And listen, whether or not the Yankees are able to pick up free agents in the future because of a move like this, we'll see. I know a lot of people talked about, hey, it was this massive contract or massive deal bringing Aaron Judge back. Yes, you just retained a player though. You didn't add a guy last year in free agency, and obviously that's part of the reason Judge dealt with some injuries. Obviously, why the Yankees offense was as putrid as it was. You know what, Adam? I'm going to give you a great take here. I'm going to give Adam 1,400 points to tied Mike Guido. So listen, again, we have yet to get a single bit of pushback on the Gryd Network on this show, on the 8 o'clock spots on a segment. I have a big time feeling that Dalton, you are going to be the very first.
Yeah, but we will now.
Yeah, we're getting it now. So I will ask the question just as a formality. Dalton Brown, is Juan Soto to the Yankees a bigger deal, or is Shohei Ohtani to the Dodgers a bigger deal?
Yeah, listen, so Mike, first of all, I want to say I respect the fact that you came at it from the narrow angle that you had to in order to make Soto the better deal. That narrow angle being, like, let's assume that the offseason's over today and the Dodgers aren't going to address their pitching with all of the money that they just saved. Look, here's the reality of it. We can say that Ohtani doesn't fill a need for the Dodgers. It does. There's a DH in the National League now, and the Dodgers just let JD Martinez walk. He absolutely fills a short-term need for the Dodgers, and he unequivocally fills a long-term need for the Dodgers as both the best power hitter in the game, top 5 power hitter in the game, and being one of the game's best pitchers. So to suggest that he doesn't fill a need, I think is a little bit of a stretch. I get where you're trying to come from there. But let's also talk about how much easier he makes it now for them to fill their needs, because they're not actually paying him $70 million per year for the next 10 years. They now have tons of cash to go get Yamamoto, go get Snell. They're already in talks on a guy like Glass now, maybe a Josh Hader. If it were March 30th, I'd be concerned. I'm not. They are about to go crazy in free agency. They have more than $100 million to work with right now to do so. And oh, by the way, they have the inside track on Yamamoto. Like, let me make that abundantly clear. Yamamoto has spent his entire life in Japan as a Dodgers fan, and now his idol, Shohei Ohtani, just signed there and is undoubtedly recruiting him and trying to bring him there. He was at Dodger Stadium today for a visit. I think they're the clear favorite to make that happen. To address the Juan Soto situation, too, it's not to take anything away from that move. I think it's a great move by the Yankees. It addresses a need. He's a great player. But the reality is right now he's under contract for 1 year. I mean, if we're talking about impact, like just impact immediately for a team, I can kind of see where you're coming from. But if we're talking about overall impact across an organization and across the next decade, I mean, this is not even an argument at this point.
Yeah, and listen, obviously you talk about Shohei Ohtani filling a need at the DH spot with the National League adding that a couple of years back. And that is one thing I 100% agree with you in the fact that a lot of folks are talking about. I know, Mike, you brought up, hey, he's not going to be pitching next year. And, hey, what is he when he comes back? I think Nathan Eovaldi of the Rangers is a prime example. Had not one but 2 Tommy John surgeries. An argument can be made. This is the best he's ever looked in his career. Obviously, he was great with my Red Sox, and now he was basically the ace with the injury to DeGrom with the Rangers to help him win a World Series. So great points across the board. And for that, I'm going to give Dalton Brown a great take. So we got a 3-way tie at the top, but Dylan Lima right there for this take. So I'll ask you, Dylan, is the Juan Soto move to the Yankees a bigger deal, or Shohei Ohtani to the Dodgers a bigger deal?
So I'm going to agree with Dalton here. I do believe Shohei is, I mean, I think he's the most impactful player in the whole MLB. He shows, I mean, yeah, sure, he won't be pitching next year because obviously his arm is a problem, but that won't stop him from raking. He showed how great of a bat he was last season, and I don't see why he won't be able to do that, especially now you'll have more motivation on a juggernaut of a team like the Dodgers. And with Soto only being a one-year deal, if the Yankees fall flat again, why would Soto have any reason to re-sign? And I honestly kind of just see him as a Giancarlo replacement, considering he's never healthy. And when he is healthy, he just can't hit anything that's not a home run. So I think they're kind of sidestepping while Soto is a very good player. And I think he will bring a lot of impact to the Yankees in the short term. I would love to see some Shohei playoff baseball, just to see him in the bright lights and perform like how he did in the World Baseball Classic before the regular season started, where he was just lights out. My only concern, and I think this is just more of a general MLB thing, and we did kind of talk about before the show, but I wanted to expand. I don't like how the contract is being deferred. I think that's overall bad for the sport, because while it's kind of like a once in a while deal, it won't be someone that everybody can do. I think just the weird economic dynamics where certain teams can just splurge on players and other teams can't. I think it'll allow the Dodgers to do a lot more funny money, where they could just sign everyone they want if they could just have all their back players on back pay and just pay them when they're not even playing anymore. It kind of cheapens the game. And I think not just in the short term, but if they, again, this is the first time it's happened. Who's to say it's not going to happen more in the future when teams are in dire economic and they need to defer? I don't like it, but I'm not an expert on that, so.
Yeah. I mean, listen. Here's the thing: is the big market teams have always gotten the free agents. The Dodgers now are officially, they might as well be the richest team in Major League Baseball. I think I saw Mookie Betts and Shohei's contract, and we obviously know how Shohei's contract is structured. But if you combine the two, I think they make more than the entire Miami Marlins payroll. So again, there are levels to this. Bigger markets like the Dodgers, Red Sox, Yankees, Mets are able to spend more money. They're simply able to spend more money than teams like the A's or the Tampa Bay Rays or organizations like that. So that hasn't changed in the last week. That's always been the case. But I'll give Dylan an okay take there for that segment, but I don't totally agree, Dylan, that it is necessarily bad for baseball, because I don't think it's that different from the way baseball's been for quite some time. Let's see, we got some comments here before we get to our final round, a very interesting final round, I might add, but Alonzo Diaz says Ohtani is the GOAT. He says adding the best player of all time is definitely more impactful, but I respect the opinion. Wow, he's taking a shot at you, man. Alonzo and Adam is like the new rivalry. He's talking about Adam don't know ball. Jeez, shots are taken right now.
He's just mad. Yeah, he must be part of Dalton's faction. Dalton's like, hey, I don't want to lose points today, so make sure when Adam starts talking, like, come in and start clapping at him. So it's all good.
Man, these shots are fired right now. It's a feisty 8 o'clock spot. So here's what we're gonna do. Well, first of all, Dylan, great effort today. 700 points on the day. Dylan, thank you so much once again for joining us here on the 8 o'clock spot. So I'll have to take you off. We'll obviously have you on at the end. We are going to do something we've never done before. All three of you gave great takes, so we're not going to do any coin flips like we've done in the past. If it's a second or third, we're just going to have the top 3 point getters go at it right now in our final topic. So we're going to go into our final round rules, and this is a winner take all, folks. There is one winner, and I repeat, one winner for this segment. The winner gets 10,000 points. Whoever has the best take in our upcoming segment, the loser gets 0. They come home empty-handed, 0 points for the loser. So our final segment revolves around the Miami Dolphins, who blew a 14-point fourth quarter lead with 14-point fourth quarter lead with 3 minutes to go. Struggling to close out the Tennessee Titans, who up until last night had yet to win a single road game. Will Levis played very well in that game, leading the Titans to a comeback. Tua struggled with the injury to Tyreek Hill, and the Dolphins fall to 9-4 and potentially squandered a chance at getting the number 1 seed in the AFC. A devastating loss for the Dolphins, especially when you consider they got to face the Ravens, they got to face the Cowboys, they got to face the Bills. Their upcoming stretch is no joke. There's no question about that. So I will start with you, Mike. Guido did last night expose the Miami Dolphins as championship pretenders.
No, I don't think so. I think right now this is an offensive football league. Right now, I think you're looking at teams that get rewarded are teams that are innovative on the offensive side of the football. They're creative, they're fast, and I think that that's what you're seeing now. That's why I think you're seeing the Cowboys explode. I think that's why you're seeing the 49ers as dominant as they are. I think teams that have innovative offenses, right? Even teams like the Baltimore Ravens, where they're very run-based, but it's a lot of how they schematically run the football. They get creative with Lamar Jackson. They do a lot of that stuff. So I think teams like that get rewarded in this league. However, I do think that there is legitimate concern for their defense. This is really a thing that I think that isn't really new. I think a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now with the Miami Dolphins has been stuff that we've known about them the entire season. They had kind of a Cowboys feel to them early on, where they were beating up on bad teams. They put 70 on the Broncos when the Broncos were reeling, and now their schedule got a little bit tougher. They're losing to teams that they probably shouldn't lose to. And listen, this is a relatively new team. This is a relatively new coaching staff and everything. I think they're adjusting to how they make adjustments. Let's throw that in there. Why not? But I think right now this is an offensive football team that is going to put up, I'm sure, a bunch of points in the playoffs. This is the best offense in the league as far or close to the best offensive football team in the league from a statistical standpoint. I think they'll be fine. But again, if they can't anchor down some sense of a defense, then they will struggle late when it comes to the AFC portion of the bracket.
Yeah, and I think a big thing for Miami and one of their better chances to compete for a championship, whether or not they're contenders or pretenders, remains. I guess obviously we'll see over the next few weeks and month. But getting the 1 seed in the AFC would have been absolutely critical, considering you got some cold weather teams like the Chiefs, like the Ravens, and having to go on the road and face those teams would have been could potentially be a big time deficiency for Miami. Whereas hosting the games at home, warm weather team would have definitely helped them, no question, in the long run. But solid take there by Mike Guido. To Adam Besse now. Did the Dolphins get exposed as championship pretenders in that loss to Tennessee?
Not in this loss against Tennessee. I think if we look at the Dolphins all season long, they're like a sports car that you're driving way too fast. Your red line, there's chances that you're going to blow a gasket, or you're going to have some sort of problem because of the speed that you're going at. And we saw it. Tyreek Hill was out for most of that first half after that injury, and Tua just couldn't kind of bounce back. They were hobbling along, and they allowed a team like the Titans, who have some dogs on their team, to come back in and win the game. This isn't the game that proves that they're pretenders this year. You know, they're losing against teams that they should be losing against: Eagles, Bills. So I don't think this game proved that they're pretenders. I think if anything, it just allows their team to know what they need to work on going into the playoffs, and that sometimes the over-evolved motion offensive plays and utilizing speed the entire time doesn't necessarily win you every single game. And the Titans just proved that. So, but this isn't the game that I would say that showed that they're not contenders.
And from an optimistic standpoint, for Miami, they now join the list of teams that have really bad losses on the resume. The Cowboys lost to the Cardinals. You think about teams like the Ravens losing to the Colts. Now, Colts are a solid playoff team, but at home, you don't want to lose those games to Gardner Minshew. So this is very common for team. The 49ers lost to a P.J. Walker quarterback to Cleveland Browns team after they dominated the Cowboys. So this is very common for Super Bowl contenders, and we'll see if Miami's able to get up off the mat. The Dolphins in 6 days take on the New York Jets. This is a game, a big-time bounce-back opportunity for a team that they did blow out on Black Friday. Finally, with you, Dalton, were the Dolphins exposed as championship pretenders in that loss to the Tennessee Titans?
So I think the Dolphins have always been championship pretenders. So I agree with Adam to an extent. I don't think this is what exposed that. I think their season-long body of work is what exposes it. Their best win all season in terms of like strength of opponent is over the Denver Broncos. And the Denver Broncos back then in week 4 were not nearly what they are now. The reality is this team hasn't proven anything. I mean, every time they've run up against better competition, they haven't won, and they've also been blown out most of the time. 28-point loss to the Bills, 14-point loss to Philly. And look, a 7-point loss on a neutral field to the Chiefs, like, I get that the Chiefs are considered one of the game's elite, but that's the Chiefs' only win recently. They've only won two of their last six, I believe, and that was one of them. So this is not exactly a team that's proven anything this season. They're not going to prove anything to me when they beat the Jets handedly on Sunday either. They do have some chances late in the season. They play the Cowboys at home, they play the Ravens, and then they play the Bills. We'll see. They can show me something then. But the reality is this team's been a pretender all year, and I want to put it in terms that I know all three of you will understand. The Dolphins are what everybody thinks the Cowboys are. Like, the Dolphins are that paper tiger. They're the team that has a ton of fun when you get them, at home against a team like the Raiders. They'll have their fun. They'll get after them, right? Even though they only won that game by 7. They'll have their fun when they get the Panthers at home. They'll have their fun, in those types of spots. But they haven't done anything. I mean, and this is also a team that went 0-5 in December and January last year and completely blew up their season. So to me, it's nothing new. If anything, they've overperformed who they really are so far. And last night was just another example of that. And it should be alarming if you blow a 2-touchdown lead with less than 3 minutes left. They are who we thought they were. And if they fooled you, that's on you.
Yeah, and by the way, the Dolphins' offense, especially with the injury to Tyreek Hill, that of course factored into it, but they didn't really put together a real offensive drive of substance. One of their touchdowns came on a pick six by Will Levis to a defensive tackle. A couple other touchdowns were on short field, so like they weren't really able to put together a long drive like you would want a team that we consider a Super Bowl contender to do so. So, listen, great takes by all of you, all three of you. First 8 o'clock spot final with 3 people, but y'all gave great takes. So I'm not going to punish somebody right here. So it comes down to one. Only one person can win, and the winner this week, as we dial up the championship music for the 8 o'clock spot, is Dalton Brown. Congratulations, Dalton, for winning this week's episode of the 8 o'clock spot live here on the Gryd Network. There we go.
Bryson just did that so that Alonzo was going to like and subscribe to the 8 o'clock spot.
Listen, I call like I said. I thought Dalton had the best overall performance. Dalton, your reaction?
Well, I'm honored. I appreciate you recognizing greatness, as you should. But I want to take my moment in the sun here to address some wild flatulence out of the mouth of Dylan earlier in the show, talking about Shohei Ohtani's contract.
Let me cut you off. Let me cut you off real quick and bring Dylan in because I want Dylan to be on the show for this. Here we go. Go ahead.
Come on in.
I'm in. I'm
here. Yeah, Dylan, listen, okay? This whole idea that it's bad for baseball, he approached every team with the same idea. This isn't some big market, big bad Dodgers situation. Any team can afford to do what the Dodgers are doing. Let me make that abundantly clear first off. Second off, in order for this to be bad for baseball, it would have to be something that could turn into an epidemic and be something that you're going to see all the time. The reality is Shohei Ohtani is an international superstar, the likes of which doesn't exist in baseball otherwise. This is very much a one-off situation. Everything that they did is completely within every CBA that's been written since 1995. This is not new either. You mentioned this is the first time this has ever happened. Go look at Max Scherzer's deal with the Nationals back in the day. Go look at deals that tons of teams have signed. Granted, they've never been to this extent, but the idea of deferring money to make the payroll hit less is not new at all. It's also not exclusively a baseball thing either. I think it's just the numbers on his deal are so shocking that it kind of pushes us back a little bit. But this is not new, and this is a very unique situation for a unique player. The idea that it ruins the game just because he didn't sign with whoever your favorite team is.
I think it was just more the. I think you're right. I think it was just the egregious, like $2 million a year for 10 years. I feel like that's a slap in the face to most teams that wish they could, put away $580 million or $680 million, whatever the hell, just on layaway for a decade and say, we'll just pay you later,
But they can, because the reality is he's going to make the team that money over those years. Inflation is going to occur during those years. That money's not going to be the same 10 years from now as it is now. The reality is any team could afford that if you're actually getting Shohei Ohtani for those years. So, look, it is what it is. I'm excited about it. The other thing too, it's not like this is going to be a cap hit on their CBT of $2 million. They're getting hit for $46 million, which is roughly what a lot of people thought Ohtani was going to get paid anyway.
Right.
I think people are just upset because the Dodgers are going to be able to continue to build this offseason. And hey, guess what? Before they signed Ohtani, the Dodgers had a lower payroll at that moment than the Colorado Rockies. They've been preparing for this.
Yeah, and I saw Shohei is like the 17th highest player on the highest paid player on the team recently. So that's so watch out if they get Yamamoto or somebody else.
And just for the record, if I was forced to have to pledge allegiance to a baseball team, it would be the LA Dodgers. So just so that everyone thinks that Dalton and I are, against each other all the time, I'm a Dodger guy through and through. But outside of Ohtani, I couldn't name another player on the Dodgers. Because it's baseball.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dalton, how does it feel to have a newly found Dodger fan who admittedly said,
"Really? No, I'll say this. Look, I'm that
baseball.
poser. I'm that poser. I have about 7 or 8 Dodger caps that I wear in rotation.
Okay.
So
I love it.
As long as the loyalty's there. But listen, the fun show tonight, no question about it. Congratulations to Dalton. Great job to Mike, to Adam, and to Dylan for a great show tonight. That is it for this week's edition of the 8 o'clock spot. Be sure to check us out next week at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, right here on the Gryd Network's YouTube channel and Twitter account. We'll see you then with another great panel, some great banter back and forth as we saw tonight, and some competitive scores back and forth. So great stuff tonight. Congratulations, Dalton. We will see you guys next week on the 8 o'clock spot. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out.